بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's program, Islamophobia in Schools, Know Your Rights as a Muslim Student. My name is Lara Abghanna, and I'm the Central Florida Region Coordinator with CARE Florida. Thank you to everyone tuning in today, as this is a very important subject we need to all be educated on as a community. I'm sure many of you have experienced anti-Muslim bullying in school, or know someone who has, or is a parent of one who's experienced such issues. I myself have experienced faith-based bullying, whether that's being called Osama bin Laden's daughter, being teased because I would sit in the library for lunch during Ramadan instead of the cafeteria, or even being attacked by a boy in middle school who tried to rip off my hijab. So our community has faced a lot when it comes to anti-Muslim challenges and discrimination, but we're gathered here today because we need to educate ourselves on the research and data of this discrimination, as well as how we can combat them when faced. So today we are joined by 4 wonderful panelists. We have Sister Petra Al-Sufi. She's the Outreach and Partnerships Manager at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, where she strengthens valued partnerships, forges new ones with organizations who also share the goal of strengthening the Muslim community and building understanding. Her work includes working with the large network of scholars and sharing research with policymakers, community leaders, faith leaders, educators, and us, the general public, to equip us with the proper information to make informed decisions. We also have joining us today is Dr. Abbas Barzagat. He is the former National Research and Advocacy Director at CARE National. He possesses years of applied research experience with recognized expertise in American Muslim history, transnational Muslim civil society, and interfaith relations. His commentary and analysis can be found in a variety of print and broadcast media outlets, including CNN, Fox News, The Guardian, Huffington Post, and Al Jazeera. We also have today with us Huzaifa Shahbaz, who is the Research and Advocacy Coordinator at CARE National. Prior to joining CARE, he was a Next Leader Fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies, where he tracked, monitored, and analyzed U.S. military spending. He was also a Summer Fellow and Research Assistant at the Othering and Belonging Institute, where he conducted research on the global rise of ethno-nationalism. And finally, we have joining us today is our very own Omar Saleh. He's a civil rights staff attorney here at CARE Florida, where he works on FBI issues, travel issues, prisoners' rights issues, school bullying and discrimination, and whatever else may come his way. We're honored to have you all with us today. But before we get into the Know Your Rights training, we're going to begin with the research and data from ISPU on Islamophobia in schools. So please welcome Sister Petra Al-Sufi.
Thank you so much, Lara, and thank you for CARE Florida for inviting us. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today and to present the data on religious-based bullying and discrimination. And before I start doing that, I just want to tell you a little bit about our organization and the work that we do. Our mission at ISPU is to provide objective research and education about American Muslims to support well-informed dialogue and decision-making. This is really important because growing up in the era after 9/11, we did not have that kind of resource. We did not have access to this kind of information. So for people like me who are doing this work, for lawyers, for parents, for students, this is a really valuable tool that we now have in our society. ISPU was founded in 2002, and we are a small but mighty team of 9 people. It was founded in Dearborn, Michigan, but have 2 offices now, one in Michigan and one in Washington, D.C. We're the only organization that does this kind of research, where our focus is on American Muslims, but we not only on American Muslims, but we also compare them to other faith communities. So you could see how, for example, discrimination impact American Muslims and compare that to other faith communities, how the civic engagement of American Muslims have changed over the last few years, and compare that to other faith communities. And this is also really, really important because the American Muslim community have always been talked about as this really different and strange community that doesn't match with any faith, with any other faith community in the US. And now we have the data to tell us otherwise. So our strategy in the work that we do is we discover, we educate, and we equip. So we discover, we do rigorous and original research in our institution that's relevant. We're always looking for feedback on what kind of topics, what kind of issues do we need to dive into. Then we take the finding and we make it very accessible to the general public, to parents, to students, to teachers, to anyone who needs it, either through engagements like this or through our infographics in other media platforms, videos, graphs that you could use. We want to make sure that our information is accessible to everyone. And then the last thing is we equip decision makers and leaders and change makers who are able to take the information and change either policies, change the way they report on the American Muslim community. We provide toolkits for religious leaders, for educators, for journalists, and for policymakers. So all the decision makers in the nation, we provide toolkits and information relevant to their area of expertise on American Muslims. And all of this is available on our website, ispu.org, for free. You could access it there. And we do that for a couple reasons. So our goals are, one, to build understanding, and the second one is to strengthen communities. So we're both focused internally on the American Muslim community, but also externally on the larger American society. Our goal is that American Muslims will look at their own issues and address them from a research perspective. They will build their own capacity and also highlight the amazing things that they do in their own communities. And then we're also highlighting and protecting American pluralism, because American Muslims are an integral part of the society. So before I dive into specifically religious-based bullying, let me give you just a glimpse of what the American Muslim community looks like. The American Muslim community is the most ethnically diverse faith community in the nation. If you look at this graph here, it is the most diverse ethnic community. We have no other community that matches the diversity of the American Muslim community. We have people of all walks of life. 28% of American Muslims are Black or African American. 8% are Latino or Hispanic. And then we have everyone in between. I always say that the American Muslim community looks like America, what America is today, but also what America will look like tomorrow. One thing to keep in mind with diversity, though, is all the issues that impact different ethnic communities and how ethnicity and race have their own challenges as well. So keep that in mind, because that's one layer of challenges. While it's a very positive thing, but there is also one layer of challenges that come to play. The second part is the American Muslim community is the youngest faith community in the nation. So we have 28% of American Muslims are between the ages of 18 and 24. 23% of American Muslims that are between the ages of 18 and 24. So that's a lot higher than other faith communities. So again, that's another layer of positive, but also challenges when we're talking about school settings. Half of American Muslims were born in this country, and the other half were born outside of the country, but 86% of American Muslims are naturalized. So when you think of issues that face immigrants or immigrant children's, here's another aspect that we could add to challenges the American Muslims face in schools, but also, some of the assets they have. And one other thing is about a third of American Muslims live at or below the poverty line. And so they report low income status, 35% of them. So again, we talked about diversity of ethnic diversity. We talked about immigration or citizenship status, age, and here we have low income. So you could think of all the layers that could come to play in a school setting when we're talking about children. Again, in the larger picture, those are assets. They could be assets, but also they could provide, or they could show challenges. So, what does discrimination and bullying look like for Muslims, and especially for Muslim kids? Some of the research I'm showing today is brand new. We just released a report, American Muslim Poll 2020, last Thursday. So the data here is brand new. But overall, what we found is that for Muslims, experience with religious discrimination remains high. So it's not new. It just remained high for the last few years. Muslims are more likely than other groups to experience religious discriminations in institutional settings. So this is a little bit new data that came out. And you'll see that American Muslims are experiencing discrimination not just at a personal level, but also at an institutional level. And then half of Muslim families report religious-based bullying, and that's twice as likely as the general public. Let me go a little bit in depth here. And it's important to see this bigger picture because this is what the families and the adults are dealing with. And then you add to what the children are dealing with, and you could just think of the impact that it has on the whole family. Majority of Muslims and Jews report experiencing religious discrimination. Again, we mentioned this have not changed over the last few years. What we found is that Muslims for over the last 5 years have reported frequency of religious discrimination around 60%. And what's new this year is, like I mentioned, Muslims are more likely than others to experience discrimination at an institutional level. So some of the places that American Muslims experience discrimination at, which you'll see here from the numbers, are so much higher than people in the general public or other faith communities. 44% at the airport, 33% while applying for a job, 31% while interacting with law enforcement, and 25% while receiving healthcare services. And you could imagine, how horrible that is, especially as we deal with a global pandemic. Okay. Next. You'll see here, this is the interpersonal religious discrimination, whether it's in the public, work, or school. This one, the numbers are a little bit closer between, Muslims, Jews, and the general public. So you'll see here that the numbers are closer, okay? But still, American Muslims are experiencing discrimination at a higher level. So moving more specifically to schools and religious-based bullying. We started doing this work a few years ago, or a few years back, because we noticed that religious-based discrimination is not receiving the attention that it needs to, but we knew it was happening to our children and to children of other faiths. So Sikh communities impacted, of course, Jewish communities impacted. So we, along with other partners like the Muslim health professionals, American Muslim health professionals, ING, Sikh Kid to Kid, and other organizations, put together an Interfaith Bullying Summit to try to address the research around that and come up with recommendations for educators, parents, and what have you. And what we found from that summit is a couple of things. So just the way that bullying is defined is it's the intent to harm, whether it's physical, psychological, or social. There is an imbalance of power such that the target has difficulty defending him or herself, and that this hurtful behavior is repeated, okay, or occurs in a persistent manner, okay? So what does that look like? Again, this is from our research this year. We found that Muslim families, 51% of American Muslim families with kids who are in K-12 public schools have reported having a child who's experienced religious-based discrimination in the last year, or received bullying because of their faith identity. So we're not talking about bullying that happens because of your immigration status, your race, all the other issues. This is because of their faith identity. The shocker, or this is very shocking for us. But what's more scary for me personally, as someone who have a lot of kids in our family and kids in our lives that we care about, is to know that 1 out of 3 of those reported cases, we're talking about reported cases, was actually the teacher or the school official was the bully. So this is not just students against students or children against children. This is adults being involved. Okay. The effect of bullying, I just want to go through this very quickly. So this is borrowed from one of the summit attendees, Dr. Roxana Chowdhury. She's with American Muslim Health Professionals. She's also the director of mental health programming, clinical psychology at George Washington University. I'm just going to go through it very quickly because I want you to see the picture, the effect. The effect of bullying not only impact kids who are bullied, but the bullying, him or herself, and also those who witness it. And kids who are bullied can experience so many negative physical, school, and mental health related issues. For example, you'll see the list here from anxiety, depression, increased feeling of sadness, loneliness, and so forth, health complications, decrease in academic achievement, and they're more likely to miss, skip, or drop out of school. Okay. How does bullying work? This is according to a major study that's done for middle school age kids. It showed that, first of all, the most common type of bullying is verbal and social. Physical does happen, but it's not the most common. And the large study showed that this is the different percentages of how bullying looks like, from name calling, which is, the top of 44%, teasing, spreading rumors, pushing, hitting, slapping, or kicking, all the way to sexual comments or gestures, and then, of course, emails and blogging, and so forth. What came out of that summit is recommendations, 8 recommendations for educators to address religious-based bullying for Muslim kids. So we're asking that teachers and administrators teachers need to be equipped with anti-bullying training. We can't just say there's bullying, figure it out. There need to be training on how to do that. Bullying should be effectively managed every time it's reported. Don't wait until there's more, 2 or 3 cases. Address it right away. Make sure to address the target of the bullying. Let them know that they're welcomed and they're cared for and they're important. But also address the kid who does the bullying to understand why that's why that's happening. Where is it coming from? Excuse me, my alarm. And all the way to K-12 teachers should be asking questions about their students at the beginning of the school year to make sure that they know more about their students and they could accommodate their needs. And also, just the school system need to promote an inclusion of individuals with disabilities, and individuals from different cultures, different religions. Okay. 2 more slides and I'm done. I apologize about that. Recommendations for educators. There need to be a sustained and systemic whole school approach to bullying. Don't just do, piecemealing or, one incident at a time. There need to be a positive school climate. I mentioned we have tools. Go to our website, ispu.org, and check out our educators toolkit. We have a whole toolkit that talks about, some tools that could be used in the classroom, but also, just more information about American Muslims. And all the way, this is a very important point for parents, is culture sensitivity and support for all minority students. This needs to be included in the curriculum. Parents need to pay attention to what is being taught in the curriculum because a couple things are happening. One, either Islam or Muslims are excluded from the curriculum completely, or they're included in a very negative lens. And that's always going to contribute to the negative environment they exist in the schools, especially with the impact of the media. And finally, pay attention to cyberspace, and work with your kids. You need to build that nurture communication with your kids. Your children need to know and feel that they could come to you and report things that are happening. There's a lot of resources for parents, and also understand the anti-bullying policies in your school, in your children's school, so you could address the incidents as they come up. Okay, so thank you so much. I've taken so much time here, but thank you. Please follow us on social media, and if you need more information, it's all available on our website, ispu.org. Check our toolkits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Petra. We really appreciate it. There is a question from South Florida Muslims. They're saying, Assalamu alaikum, great topic to discuss. They want to know if it's primary data or secondary data that ISPU is using. Can you answer that question?
So the 52%, is that what they're asking about?
I believe the data in general that you're using.
Yeah, so
the
51%, this was a direct question to, the general public, including obviously American Muslims. So this is what American Muslim parents who took the survey and have kids in school, K to 12, answered. 51% reported having a kid who was religiously bullied. The other information, some of the recommendations came out of the summit, which was a summit of experts that we held a couple years ago.
Wonderful. Jazakallah khairan. Again, we really appreciate it. Honestly, that was truly, truly educating. And personally, I'm actually shocked at some of those statistics. But alhamdulillah for the team, ISPU, and all the wonderful work you're doing. Jazakallah khairan. Again, we really appreciate it. If you're just now tuning in, we are live, Islamophobia in Schools, Know Your Right as a Muslim Student. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the Facebook or YouTube comments. So next, we're going to dive into some of the work that the CARE Federation has been doing to combat Islamophobia in schools. So we're going to go ahead and welcome Dr. Abbas Barzagad and Huzaifa Shahbaz.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you both doing? Inshallah, you're doing well.
Doing well. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Well, go ahead.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Go ahead and take it away.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, everybody. I also wanted to apologize for the informality of my dress as well as sort of being in my vehicle. We are just on the sidelines of a rally for the beloved Imam Jamil Al-Amin. If anybody, any of the viewers are, they should be educated about this, knowing that you all did a presentation on this just recently, CARE Florida. Thank you for amplifying. But it's a beautiful day down here in Atlanta in the west side at West End Park next to his home and his masjid. And so we're just on the sidelines rallying for him here. I think we have about 10 minutes, and I just want to, split my time here with Huzaifa for a while to talk about what our approach at the CARE National Office has been and how we've tried to learn from a lot of people in our own network, as well as build upon some of the great work that others in our community are doing, such as ISPU. And also want to just take a moment out and say congratulations to the ISPU team for delivering yet another year of excellent data, excellent work, communicating very nuanced, data and information about our community to audiences. Congratulations again to the ISPU team there. So quickly, our approach, I'm going to take about 5 minutes here. Our approach to school bullying was really, and has been, continues to be, a work in progress, a kind of pilot study, thinking about what a systematic approach is to not just bullying, but the overall issue of school climate. So I did a lot of learning from people at ISPU, people in our own CARE family, in our own CARE network. And what we realized is that, when you have statistics like this, whether it's from ISPU or from our own CARE studies and other kind of studies that are out there, that suggest that Muslims, along with some other visibly Muslim-looking religious communities, such as the Sikh community, when you get numbers that they are experiencing bullying at twice the rate of the national average. Everybody needs to really understand that, twice the rate, and we can always expect that this is underreported. So we're talking about more than double the national average. And on top of that, we have a problem where depending on what statistics you're looking at, 25 to 40% of these cases and these incidents involve an administrator or a teacher. What you're looking at is a situation where you have a serious institutional or systemic problem around anti-Muslim bullying, so much so that we might call this just an Islamophobia in schools and an overall problem of anti-Muslim bigotry in school systems and in the school environment, in the school climate. So it's not just about peer-to-peer aggression, and it's not simply about sort of refining our already existing, anti-bullying work. As you know, we've had successive presidential administrations trying to address the issue of bullying at large, and now we have a particularized problem of how Muslims are experiencing it. When you start to dig into the data and you start listening to students, especially, we started holding focus groups with students, for example, different age groups, with parents, and studying the literature very, very closely and consulting with experts. What we realized is that the way that you would talk about an overall school environment is through the eyes of the children experiencing it. There are many touch points, engagement points, where a student might feel alienated. And so for us trying to understand and solve these problems, we started to kind of create a graph of sort of where might anti-Muslim bullying occur and in what kind of context or in what kind of setting. What we realized is that, okay, you have peer-to-peer aggression, which is your standard bullying. And what we did is we implemented a pilot study, refining and combining some of the methods and the approaches that we've seen used elsewhere. And we developed a new survey, and we've implemented that now in 5 sites, alhamdulillah, and some of them are still ongoing, unrolling and trying to get a very sort of granularized representation of what's happening. So it's not just a nationwide portrait, which is very important, but also, can we talk about this at the very hyper local level? That way the statistics and the information can empower our community to engage schools directly on how a problem might be being dealt with in a particular location. So, alhamdulillah, refine the study, refine the survey instruments, and build out teams to implement those surveys at a local level to propel advocacy forward. Alhamdulillah, we've done that, and we're doing that. The other area, as you can tell, is the issue about administrators and teachers. They need cultural sensitivity and religious sensitivity training. They themselves are part of the problem. So how is it that you engage education around anti-Muslim bigotry and Islamophobia directly with teachers? So we start partnering with school districts, really at the level of the school district and the board kind of level, to get buy-in to do sort of mass level teaching across the system, and really working with schools directly to understand the intricacies of every school system. And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize, that the touch point isn't actually the classroom with the teacher. If we had to do that, it would be millions and millions of people that we'd have to talk to. It would be impossible. But you can find engagement points with administrators who can then filter down and create structures to address these issues. So alhamdulillah, we started to refine our process there and try to identify the policy kind of engagement points. And then finally, one thing that we realized was that, picture a setting around 9/11. Almost every year we get reports about this. 9/11 is taught to American public children all across this country. And that moment is a major possibility, a major flashpoint where something could go wrong with either peer-to-peer aggression, teacher-to-peer aggression, or teacher-to-student aggression, as well as this third column, which is kind of the signature piece that we're trying to bring to the table, and that is curriculum reform. People don't realize that the Islamophobia is actually embedded in the textbooks, and that you have to actually understand how your children are being taught about Islam and Muslims, how that relates to Islamophobic tropes and anti-Muslim tropes. We have to have our censors and our radars off, as well as research instruments available to be able to understand where this is coming from. And then you have to provide an alternative to the educators themselves. You have to bring forward the evidence, the critique, and then an alternative, so that we can deal with this in a systemic way. And we argue that for school engagement to really work, it has to combine all 3 of these elements. And so we talk about holistic school environments, But if the holistic school environment is only concerned about bullying and not pedagogy, and not cultural and religious sensitivity training or DEI training to include Muslims, we run the risk of really of undermining our own work. It's sort of like putting a Band-Aid on a solution, and really just, you know, it's just not ever going to get there. I want to take one quick moment before we engage maybe some Q&A. I want to introduce here Josefa Shabazz, the incoming research and advocacy coordinator at the national office. Josefa, I believe you have some statistics and some kind of top line notes you'd like to share with the audience as well, inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for allowing us to be here. I'm very excited to be here and meet all of you. I am the new research and advocacy coordinator at Caring National, so I do look forward to working with you all. And a lot of what Petra said, I'm going to be reiterating. And for me personally, being from the Bay Area and being from California, I kind of want to jump on the report that Care California did in 2018 to 2019. So what they did was they conducted a survey with the Care chapters in California of 1,500 Muslim students aged 11 through 18. And they wanted to see how they felt about their school environment, how they express or maintain their Muslim identity, and the extent of anti-Muslim bullying and harassment students experience. So I'm going to go over some of just the major highlights. So, you know, first of all, 30% of the respondents did not report feeling welcome and respected in schools. And we realized that it is 2019 now, and this survey was in 2018. So we're still at a time now where students are experiencing harassment for being Muslim, not only in the school space, but outside the school space as well. 35% of the 2018 respondents reported that their peers make offensive statements about Islam and Muslims online. So there's this social media aspect that is taking place. 40% of respondents reported that students at schools were being bullied for being Muslim. And then there's also gender-based differences as well in looking at the survey responses. So, for example, more female students reported experiencing bullying, with 44% of female respondents reported being bullied, compared to 37% of male respondents. And then next, 55% of Muslim students in California reported being subjected to some form of bullying based on their religious identity, and which is more than twice the national average for bullying in school. And then I think another really important point is that 39% of students reported seeing another student being bullied for being Muslim. This has gone up significantly by 20 percentage points since 2016. Where only 19% of students reported seeing other students being bullied for being Muslim. And if we look at this from an administrative level, like Petra said, looking at teachers, looking at admins, the result is quite shocking. 29.3% of students report that school staff have made offensive comments about Islam or Muslims at school. And 14.8% of students reported that school staff has made offensive comments about Islam or Muslims to them directly. And so this is important to recognize because it's a testament that other students are not the sole instigators of bullying, but we also have admins, administrative folks, we have teachers, and like Abbas said, we have educational curriculum that's impacting the Muslim student experience and how well they do in schools. And then also we talked about the Sikh community, those who are perceived to be Muslim. And so if you look at those who are perceived to be Muslims, greatly impacted as well. According to the Sikh Coalition, 50% of Sikh students and 67% of turbaned Sikh Americans nationally reported having experienced bullying. And so again, not only knowing your rights as a Muslim student is important, but also understanding your right to safety is just as important. And so if you're a student being bullied, discriminated against, you have every right to file a complaint with the school district. It's the responsibility of the state, the greater school community, including the educators, parents, advocates, to ensure that anti-bullying laws are enforced and that the policies are adopted by school districts. Particularly for educators, schools should implement a policy-based action to train school administrators and teachers and to work to engage Muslim families in the school's community. So just lastly, parents should remain vigilant looking for signs of bullying and harassment, and this can include physical manifestations such as bruises or scrapes, or other changes in behavior, such as an increase in absence from school or a change in desire to attend school. So inshallah, I just wanted to kind of highlight these kind of statistics and kind of put into picture what this looks like for many Muslim students, and also looking at the administrative level and looking also at those who are perceived to be Muslims as well. So inshallah, that's all I have for you. And, I look forward to working with you all.
Jazakallah khairan for the wonderful information. I personally have a question, actually. So you're giving us statistics from California, and if I heard you correctly, you said over 50% in California have claimed discrimination, school bullying. Is that correct?
Yes, 55% of Muslims in California reported being subjected to some form of bullying. Yeah.
Wow. So I was wondering, actually, has CARE National, or even Sister Petra, if you have any information from ISPU, has there been any comparison between more liberal areas versus the more conservative areas of the states, and what that discrimination looks like? Because personally, I'm shocked to hear over 55% in California, when I view California as more of a liberal, open state versus, I would expect that from somewhere else. So is there any kind of comparison? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in real quick, just because I was looking around. We find in Texas very comparable numbers as in California, even higher a little bit. Our pilot study in North Carolina shows similar rates. Our Maryland study shows less, than the national, well, not less than the national average, but less than the trend line in the Muslim American community. But what we're also finding is that some of these variables, it's not really state to state. It could not even be city to city. So one of the things that we've tried to do is create methodologies to really identify and examine exactly where students are, even on the socioeconomic ladder, what kind of, ethnic composition the school is in, what neighborhood or suburb are we reporting out of. And what we're trying to do is create a much more clear mosaic understanding at a kind of granular, fine, local level, to understand what does the mosaic of this subject look like across the board? What are trend lines that actually matter across all of these different geographies? And then what are certain things that are unique to, local contexts? And the reason that we're really interested in that granular level data is because to get your foot in the door at a school district, especially, schools are hyper politicized environments. You have to have very concrete, very recent, and very viable data to work with in order to make the case that we are going to be a long-term stakeholder in this community and long-term partners on this problem. So to do that, you have to have hyper local data, really refined, really methodologically sound.
That's excellent. Again, thank you so much, Brother Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless the work of ISPU and CARE National for their phenomenal research on this issue. Again, if you're just now tuning in, we're live, Islamophobia in Schools, Know Your Rights as a Muslim Student. Please feel free to leave any of your comments, questions, concerns in the FB or in the Facebook or YouTube comments. So we're going to move forward. So since now, due to COVID-19, many schools have actually turned to virtual schooling. So we're seeing a lot of different issues popping up. So I think that despite the physical distance, there's still that threat of bullying. There's still that threat of discrimination that students are our students are experiencing. So we're going to discuss a little bit about cyberbullying. Please, Omar, take it away. He's going to be discussing cyberbullying and inshallah provide us with a Know Your Rights training as well.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Sister Laura. As always, when I'm a little bit farther down in the talk, I start revising things because a few reasons. I mean, one, I'm just blown away from what I've already heard, and I think it'd be most valuable for me to tell everybody to simply rewind what you've just seen and listen to it again and tell your friends to listen to it. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, alhamdulillah, with Brother Abbas, Brother Huzaifa, and Sister Petra. Let me give Laura a quick intro because she doesn't give herself one. Laura, if people don't know, is a law grad. She works with CARE Florida and She graduated from Barry University, is currently studying for the bar. So inshallah, she will be with us on our team litigating, inshallah. Maybe that's a little bit of pressure, but so again, I think the most important thing in this talk is to understand that we cannot do the work that we do with the information that Brother Abbas, Brother Huzaifa, and Sister Petra were just talking about. It's information that we did not have in the past. It's so much easier for me to, whether it's having a meeting with a teacher, a school board member, counsel for the school board, that if we don't have this concrete information, like Brother Abbas was talking about, how far we can get, it also serves as information for our own community, something that we've been trying to do more and more, especially in this COVID world. So, we talked a little bit about the 2018 Islamophobia report authored by Sister Zainab, who's not on this, but wealth of information. If you haven't read the 2019 Islamophobia report by Brother Abbas, I urge everybody to read it. So here I am with a powerhouse of knowledge. I mean, when you talk about knowledge is power, here we are with a powerhouse of knowledge. What am I going to offer? What I'm going to do, inshallah, is really, I'm going to touch upon cyberbullying really quick, talk a little bit about Florida state-specific bullying and cyberbullying, because there is a law in Florida. And then I'll wrap it up, inshallah, with some do's and don'ts. It's that time where, people might want people might want to do other things. It's close to Maghrib, inshallah. So as our guests already spoke about the different types of bullying, it could be anywhere from teasing to name calling, inappropriate comments. An example of this, and Brother Abbas was right about 9/11 being a point where we get an increased number of calls. Teachers will show a video of 9/11, and then it could, we've gotten calls for kids being bullied before the lights are being turned off. People make explosion noises to think it's funny. Taunting students. It could be amounting to social exclusion. We've had cases where kids are just excluded and they don't understand why. What's very unfortunate is that school bullying is not limited to school, and especially now, most kids are using their phones and their social media to harass people. So I think that at least a good part about COVID is that there's not a physical instances that we're seeing here. Cyberbullying means bullying through the use of any electronic technology. So it could be the telephone, the internet. The Florida statute gets pretty specific. It could be any sort of wire communication. What I think our parents and the community and our students should understand is that cyberbullying and school bullying is illegal. There are laws that protect our students. And there's an important point of why I'm telling you that it's the law, not just to protect your children, but also to protect yourself against liability. And I'll talk about why in a little bit when I explain our do's and don'ts. We've gotten calls of people being put in situations outside of school, and I wanted to mention that school bullying does not only take place outside of the school. We've seen instances of it happening in sleepovers, in the park, in the school bus, which is kind of in school but not. A lot of people think that, or they'll tell me, oh, well, everybody will get bullied. Or I've gotten bullied, or everybody gets bullied, let's just face it. And, the truth is, just like, Laura was mentioning that she does get bullied, the difference, there's a difference. And I was brought up as a kid in the public school system. And yes, I did face some harassment, some bullying, but nowhere near to the extent of what our post 9/11 children are experiencing now. It's something that I didn't believe until I'm seeing it in front of me, and that's why I'm stressing to especially our parents that you may not realize the importance of this information until you're confronted with an instance of cyberbullying. So what do you do? If bullying rises to the level of a pervasive or persistent harassment, and your kid is just showing signs of being harassed, there are federal laws which protect against cyberbullying, but there's also state laws. Florida has a statute. It's called the Jeffrey Johnson Stand Up for All Students Act, and it's named after an individual who was bullied constantly and took his own life. So that person's mother raised awareness, and which led to the passing of this law, which is helping others. It's essential that Muslim students, bullying of Muslim students is not the same bullying that everybody sees, because it's directed toward the race or religion, which is a topic that gets brought up constantly, especially in this political climate. So whether it's 9/11 or Veterans Day, we've gotten school bullying incidents because of a Veterans Day school project, or Memorial Day, or a history lesson that has to do anything with Middle East or 9/11 or religion or terrorism, is a constant opportunity for kids to be confronted with it. In cyberbullying, it's the same exact thing, except now it could happen through text messaging, chatting, Instagram. People could take compromising photos and use them to somebody's advantage. And bullying isn't only using physical strength, but also, okay, Lara's giving me a signal here, and thank you, because I needed that reminder. I'm going to talk about do's and don'ts for our young students, and then for our parents. And for the students is number one, the most important thing, and that is to know your rights. And our students should know that it's not okay to be called names. It's not funny. It's not cool. If somebody does it once, you need to show that it is not okay. And that brings me to the number two, do. If you do feel that you are subject to harassment, you need to show that it is not okay. Oftentimes it's the repetitive behavior or repetitive harassment that leads to the effects of bullying. And number three, very important as well, do report it to your teacher and your parents. Don't think that it won't happen again, or it's okay, or he's my friend, or I want to be cool. It's very important to know what bullying is. We've explained it. Two, to show that it's not okay, and three, to report it. Here's what not to do is, and I don't know if our kids are in the audience. Hopefully they are, and if not, parents, please relate it to your kids. But do not repeat the same behavior being done to you. Certainly, do not fight physically, and third, do not stay quiet. Those are three don'ts that we really hope our kids, inshallah, would take. And then for our parents, the number one do is the same: know your rights. Know that that teasing is not okay. Name calling is not okay, especially when it comes to our Muslim kids. Number two, do call your school, engage with your teachers, your principal, and if you have to, you can call CARE. We take it from there, and I'll explain a little bit about the work that we do with schools and the school board. I'll tell you what not to do is, it's one thing to call the school and engage with the teachers, but don't take matters into your own hands. Don't take justice into your own hands. Definitely don't tell your kids to fight back, and definitely don't stay quiet. Okay, this is something, we've had phone calls of parents saying, you know what, should we even make a big deal out of this? Well, if they're calling our office, then surely it is a big deal. What do we do about it? Well, we ensure that if this involves a student, that the student is properly disciplined by the school. Okay. If that's not happening, then there's clearly a problem with the school administration itself. And if the school administration is not taking action, then we take it to the school board level. And alhamdulillah, we've been very successful in just reaching out, forming that dialogue, ensuring that whoever needs to be disciplined is disciplined, and then to follow it up, like most importantly, like Brother Abbas and Sister Petra were saying, is forming a mechanism of knowledge to provide the schools so that they can use it. I can go on forever about this, and I might be hopping in different directions or locations. But again, there's such a wealth of knowledge to deal with. I really wanted our parents to take away these do's and don'ts of how to address it. Always, if you're unsure, you don't know what to do, definitely call Care Florida or an attorney. Call somebody. If your kid is victim to bullying, you might not know it right away. There's certain signs and symptoms from not eating or not behaving as usual, coming home with stolen or broken items, or just not communicating appropriately. It's important to know if there are different signs and to address it. This is especially not the time to stay quiet if our young Muslim brothers and sisters are being subject to harassment.
Thank you so much, Omar. We really, really appreciate that. The do's and don'ts are very, very important. So I really hope that you all took note of that. However, a lot of people don't necessarily understand what their rights are. So what are you allowed to do? What can they not tell you about? What can they, what are you allowed to do as a Muslim student? So we're going to go through some rights that you have as a Muslim student. So this will move forward. So we have our dress code. So Omar, if you want to elaborate on this, the dress code with the right to wear hijab or any Islamic attire in public, the right to not wear shorts in PE, or a uniform, to have it a proper attire that conforms to the school uniform as well as your Islamic attire. Omar, can you elaborate a little bit on this?
So, in the context of school bullying, this is about knowing that you have the right and the full ability to wear your hijab, to cover yourself in gym class. Knowing your right, you have to let the teacher know that that's your right. And if they're not affording you that right, absolutely notify your parents. But also when it comes to students, if somebody is going to make fun of your hijab or your clothing, even if it's even if they might appear to be your friend and seem like they might do it as a joke, it is still important to notify them that it is not okay. And that's sometimes could be the tough thing to do as a student in the school context at PE. I'm saying it's easy. I don't wear hijab, sister. I know you have it hard in PE class, so it's easier for me to say, just tell them it's not okay. But it's so important. Why? Because it's part of the report. When we get to the reporting process, we also notify them that this is unwanted behavior that was conveyed in the first place. Ramadan and holidays. Schools cannot penalize you for missing school on religious holidays. So you have to take the day off for Eid or Ramadan. Your teacher can't penalize you for that. If they tell you have to show up, call us, and parents, of course, call us. This is not a small issue that you can write off. We've been working with the school boards like Broward County School Board, which is where our South Florida office is, in recognizing Muslims and Muslim holidays, alhamdulillah, but every jurisdiction is different.
So Omar, if I can actually ask a question about the Ramadan and holidays. So for instance, I had an experience when I was in law school where at orientation, actually, the dean had covered, if you have a religious holiday, use one of your absences, because you're allotted 6 absences every semester for each class. So that was his excuse, to use one of the absences instead of getting it waived essentially. So then you're not missing out on one of your absences that you might need for an emergency, and you would use them for Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha. Is that something that's okay, that they're making that, that they're saying, well, you already have these absences, use one of those absences for a holiday, or is it something that they should accommodate separately?
No, that should be considered an excused absence. I mean, every school has their protocol for what is an excused or unexcused absence. In essence, what would be considered like an absence is something that should be counted against you or tallied in a way that you wouldn't be able to use that day later. No, that is your right to spend that day. Always, it's very important. I mean, this always boils down to knowledge is key, and as power, and educating the public. And as long as we do that, it really does eliminate a lot of problems. That's why when you speak to your school ahead of time to request this, you're putting them on notice, no last minute items. It will facilitate you're reaching that goal, inshallah, and making sure you get those accommodations. But and I was thinking back on Brother Abbas when he was talking about the 9/11 trigger point. I mean, right now, I mean, we're putting alarm clocks in July or August to start being prepared to deal with the situations of September. It's about preparation, educating the folks who you will be dealing with beforehand. It's an effective tool, and we can't be as effective without the data and the knowledge that we gather. It's like gold. Just rewind this video and listen to it again, or definitely read the Islamophobia reports. It's eye-opening. And I didn't realize too, and I'm going to check out the educator's toolkit from the ISPU. Something that I can't wait to get into, and it's a phenomenal resource. That it's not just for lawyers, parents. I mean, I encourage you to do the same thing. These are this is what she's telling me. Next slide. Okay, you are allowed to pray individually or in a group during school timings. It advises you to choose a time to pray that doesn't coincide with school activities or class time. There's opportunities within school that you can take to pray that you can't be interfered. And I think it's being tactful is important, but you don't have to be forced into a corner. So, I mean, lunch period or any break is something that you can take. But if you have to leave, just make sure to inform your teacher. But these are things that you can do. If you have to leave for your prayer, just coordinate it with school officials.
Right. I actually remember in high school, I remember I would get a little path to pray Dhuhr because you have your 7 classes back to back. And at the beginning of the school year, me and my Muslim friends, we'd go to the guidance counselor to say, during this time and this time, we need to pray Dhuhr. She'd give us a pass, so then we'd be able to leave class and go to the library. As well as, when I started graduate school, same thing. I was like, listen, I'm going to be during, my night classes, it goes from Maghrib to Isha, and so sometimes I'd have to miss Maghrib. But I told them, I said, I'm going to be leaving class for about 15 minutes so I can go make wudu, and I can go, and I had a designated area. I feel like as long as you're informing your teachers ahead of time, you would be able to get that accommodation. And again, as Omar said, and as I hope you all understand, if they're not giving you these accommodations, then please contact Care Florida. So I'm gonna, before we wrap up, thank you, Omar. I hope we all leave this program with a better understanding of our rights and that we shouldn't be afraid to practice our faith as we see fit. Our practice is protected by the Constitution, and most importantly, it's protected by Allah. So don't be afraid. Inshallah, Care Florida, ISPU, Care National, we all have your back. But before we wrap up, we do have some questions from our viewers. We'll go ahead and go over them. So Sister Saba Ali, she was saying there was anti-Semitic legislation passed recently for K through 12. How can we take the data and something similar and even better, inshallah?
I think what the caller is referencing to is the House Bill 741, which penalizes anti-Semitic language in Florida K through 12 schools, and it's something that's been in the news. Researching the enforcement and the effects of it, and there are several contexts within which this could or may be challenged, and it is one that Care Florida hasn't dealt with directly, but this is a bill that was passed last year. So the enforcement and effects is something that we still have yet to see. But I think if you want to get some good information on it, aside from, you can get the legislative information on Sunshine Online. You'll be looking at staff analysis, which you can go through the data that's been compiled to pass the bills. But other sort of resources on it, I don't know offhand. The best way to research a law is to research the legislative history, look at the analysis, and see what the intent on it is. And we know that it centers behind a definition of anti-Semitism that includes criticism of Israeli policies. It delves into politics, and I think that the argument that some people make is that you could be critical of one country over their how they handle politics, but not Israel without possibly being penalized according to this law, is how I understand it.
Right, and that's something that's at the the Florida state level. So I guess at what level do you feel that advocacy will be most effective? Local level, state level, national level?
I think national. I think at all levels is important to address the goals that we want to see, and again, I'm going to bring it back to information and statistics, right? Anti-Semitism does exist, and it's a problem that should be addressed. Islamophobia is a problem that exists and should be addressed, and the way we do that is through the data backing it up, showing the reports, whether it's travel delays and you file a trip complaint is one of the methods of you reporting. Reporting is so important because it provides the background to the data that that our amazing guests are here talking about.
Right. So we have another question from Abdullah Al-Yahya. Sometimes incidents are not reported because of fear of being bullied even more, targeted by peers or teachers. Petra, if you can answer to this, what do you think can we do about that?
Thank you. Actually, yeah, that's true. I was, in prep for this talk, I was looking at antibullying.gov, or the National Bullying, the government website, and it says about 50% of bullying incidents are actually reported, or less. So we know, about half or the majority are not reported. But as parents or as people in children's lives, you'll notice when your child or someone you care about is not being themselves. Right. That's why I wanted to include the slides I included from Dr. Shadring, because it's important to notice behavior changes in your child, skipping school, not wanting to go to school, change in grade or in attitude. I mean, don't automatically assume those changes are, this is because the kids are just being kids. Your kids better than anyone else. So if you start seeing something that doesn't add up, really ask them, try to be there for them. Sometimes it's really hard for children to just come up to their parents and say, oh, I'm being bullied in school, because, and this is, I'm talking from experience and from people that I know in my life. Sometimes we don't build the right relationships with our children to create a safe environment for them to come up to us and say, hey, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whatever, there's something going on. It's important to build this communication lines with your children. If the parents are not the right people, it's always important to have someone in the child's life that could be that line of communication. It could be, an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or a grandma. So when you start seeing something that does not add up, try to dig deeper and see what's going on. Maybe you'll find that bullying is the problem.
I think also, just to add on to that as well,
Please.
of course, when you're in high school, you're in middle school, you could fear your teachers, right? But there's always that one person in your school that you trust. One, either it's a different social studies teacher or if it's your counselor. So you can always go to your counselor, for example, and ask them to intervene on your behalf. And so you're someone that is trusted, someone that will take initiative for the problems you are facing. And so if you're not comfortable with your parents, you're not comfortable with a specific teacher, I think maybe a guidance counselor can intervene, or another person you trust within your school community.
Absolutely. Sorry, can I, one more thing. So when we do teacher training, we did a couple teacher trainings, and obviously the teachers that are going to show up to teacher trainings by, Muslim or organizations that cater to Muslim Americans are usually already allies. So what we emphasize, and this is really important for organizations that do cultural competencies or any kind of teacher trainings, is to emphasize the people in the room might not be the ones that really need the training. They just need the resources and the information. Right. They need to be the one to take that information and resources to their colleagues who are more hesitant to come to a voluntary training. Obviously, it's a different story when it's required, or are part of the statistics. If they're that one person out of the three who are the bullies, and just like we do bystander training for almost every other issue, it's just as important in this topic. If you are a teacher or an administrator or, I don't know, a custodian in the school, you see an adult, especially if you see an adult bullying or saying a comment or acting inappropriately toward, a Muslim child or any child for that matters, it is so important to speak up. And I know it's a very awkward situation because those are your colleagues at that point. But remember, it's, which is better, to offend or to make a colleague adult uncomfortable or to protect a child. So those are the choices.
No, that's very true. We do have one more question from Sister Hiba. Do we have 9/11 toolkits for public schools advising educators on how to properly address such a sensitive issue? So is there any information from ISPU, from CARE National, or what can we do at CARE Florida, do you think, to create these toolkits for 9/11 specifically?
So I know for CARE National, we've been, for the survey that Abbas was talking about, that we've distributed into 4 different CARE chapters, we have assembled a toolkit. However, it's not public yet and it's still in progress, and we want to finalize that soon. So inshallah, the plan is to work with other CARE chapters to act to be as a forum, CARE chapter forum, to introduce other chapters about this toolkit so they can go back in their own communities and educate the public about these issues. So inshallah soon, and we are working on that right now.
That sounds great.
So for ISPU, we don't have anything specific to 9/11 as a toolkit, but it is one of the issues we discuss, obviously, when we do teacher trainings, along with, how would you address sensitive topics. But I think this speaks to, I believe it was Abbas that was talking about addressing the curriculum in general. How do you address the curriculum and changes that are happening in the curriculum, and the importance for parents to really be aware and be involved in, their district's curriculum changes, updates, or just to know what is being taught in your child's school. So one of the things that we have is, a project called Muslims for American Progress. So we use that as a tool. We give that to school districts to say, we know you don't have much information about American Muslims involved in your curriculum or about Islam. Here is one tool that you could incorporate into your curriculum. Also, our research just generally on Islamophobia. And the last thing I want to say about this is, and I think it's really important to realize that, to Abbas's point, connecting religious-based bullying to the overall Islamophobia, atmosphere. It's a really hard way to describe it. Is it's ideology, political ideology plays a huge role, and it's one of the predictors of Islamophobia than any other thing. So to know just generally the Islamophobic climate that Muslim kids are growing up in, and the fact that most schools just don't know and don't have access to information beside what they see in the media, which the media portrays Islam and Muslims worse than they do cocaine and cancer. So, it's not surprising to know that around 9/11 it becomes even more of a sensitive time for Muslim kids. So what we advise is, how would you, first of all, make sure it's grade appropriate. If you're teaching, obviously teach about the attacks, but are the information you're providing about the attack, would you provide them, would you provide the exact same information in the exact same way if it was another group, if it wasn't a Muslim group that committed the attacks, right? Think about the information that you're providing. Is it age appropriate? Like, what information are you providing to elementary, middle, and high school kids? And also just pay attention that you're not adding to the otherization of your students, of Muslim students. So think about the sensitivity the same way that you would think about addressing any other really sensitive topic in our nation, whether it was race, gender, socioeconomic status, or obviously religious.
Right. I would also say not just otherization, but tokenization. When teachers start talking about 9/11 and they want to turn to the one Muslim student in the classroom and ask them, what are your thoughts about this? Or things like that. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced that. But those are all the questions that we can get through today. But if you have any that were not addressed, please feel free to contact us at CARE Florida. You can either call or text us at the numbers provided. And please do not hesitate to contact us at CARE Florida if you're experiencing school discrimination or really any form of discrimination. But I do want to let everybody know that outside of CARE Florida, outside of CARE National, outside of ISPU, there is a Know Your Rights by the U.S. Department of Education, Office for Civil Rights. There is the types of discrimination covered by Title VII, which is shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics or citizenship or residency in a country, religion, background. So the link is provided in the comments. So please feel free to check that out. Or if you'd like a hard copy, let us know, and we'll also provide you one from CARE Florida. So thank you again to all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you for showering us with your knowledge and expertise. And thank you to all of our viewers as well. Please share this program with your friends and family. Spread the wealth of knowledge. Inshallah, we can all be beneficial to one another. And one last reminder for parents, for those over the age of 18, please complete the census if you have not already, and please register to vote. If you need assistance on doing so, please contact us. We can also assist you in requesting a vote by mail ballot if you do not wish to go to the poll during the pandemic. So we understand. Thanks again, everyone, and stay tuned for more work from ISPU, CARE National, and CARE Florida. Jazakallahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.